And one of the reasons that these riparian areas are so efficient at packing in diversity is because of this niche partitioning, that you have a certain amount of resources, a certain range of resources, and because you have a very rapidly changing set of conditions, you can have different species that take advantage of those conditions packed in very tightly together. So you have the true aquatic stuff in the stream. And I say, with Compton Creek, I'm not too sure what we're ever going to achieve with that part. But as you come on out, you come through floating plants, rooted plants along the edge. Then you have deep water plants and shallow water plants. You come out into grasses and makes it herbaceous. You come into a shrub layer, then a young forest and mature forest. And those who are familiar with some of the tenets of landscape ecology, this kind of thing is a very classic type of edge where you have multiple zones of vegetation. And in those zones, you will get, if we're talking about birds, for example, one of the areas of study, you get different species of birds using the shrubs, different species again using the young trees or the short-statured trees, and a whole different suite using the tall canopy trees. And so in a very narrow area by the side of a stream, you can pack in a lot of different species. And that's one of the reasons these riparian zones are so diverse. Here, this being Southern California, and based on other riparian zones that are around here, and we're borrowing here from some of the wetland fringes as well. What do we see over the Gardena willows, for example, which although that's not most of the time a stream, it has its days when water comes in and goes out really fast. But certainly the structure that we see there of the riparian zone is something that we could imagine being possible along the Compton Creek. So you have arroyo willows, for example, fairly close to the water, and as you go back, you have things like the maple and the box elder. And that provides this multi-layer system. One of the problems that we have in all riparian zones around here are the exotics. Compton Creek, of course, is classic. There are a few natives in there, in the riparian zone, but the majority are non-native grasses. I'm not sure that here there's a lot of ivy. One of the big problems with riparian zones around here is ivy growing in. It becomes very invasive, makes it difficult for anything else to grow. So these zones, when left untended, if you like, have this nasty habit of being taken over by invasives. If woody vegetation isn't possible, I know there are certainly issues along the soft bottom there with how many trees you can have in a zone that is prone to flooding. You can have a good herbaceous riparian system. You lack the vertical structure. So vertical structure is very, very important for diversity. But you can still have a system that is taken over by native species without the trees. Again, in these systems, you always have to be watching out for the invasives. Another reason that riparian zones can be very, very diverse is there is a well-established relationship in ecology between diversity and productivity. And riparian systems, especially those with flowing water, tend to be very productive. You have a lot of nutrients coming downstream, and because of this niche partitioning, the different types of plants, either floating, shallow-rooted, deep-rooted, and so on, you get very efficient use of those nutrients. You get good breakdown of organic matter. A lot of the organic matter cycling is things that are flowing in from upstream, that if the water slows down, coming through a well-developed riparian zone, that gives time for the organic matter to break down. And in a flowing system, you do have the opportunity to flush out toxic elements. So you can get leaching from the ground around the riparian zone, leaching of those toxics into the water, they get flushed downstream, they become somebody else's problem, which is the history of basically channelizing the rivers around here. But it does mean that if you're looking to do urban agriculture, for example, the soils do slowly clean themselves out. There are examples of riparian areas around here that we can go from. There are old examples in the LA River, old pictures of Compton Creek, currently at the Wilmington Drain. Willows, cottonwood, and sycamore, very good. Native trees, well represented. Sedges, rushes, and grasses, again, natives. We can find examples of those all around here. They provide habitat. One of the studies I had done prior to moving to California was on the use of small forest patches by birds in an urban area. And what we find is that birds will use almost anything. If there's nice vertically structured green space, they will use it. And you have a much higher diversity of birds. You have a higher diversity of insects if you have these green areas. And so they provide habitat. They provide corridors. Riparian zones are wonderful for wildlife corridors. Not too sure what kind of wildlife you will have coming down the Compton Creek. One thing, you'll probably get coyotes. They seem to be moving into the area. They certainly, they're very evident in Long Beach, along the LA River, along the LA River in Long Beach. I see no reason why we shouldn't start seeing them along here. We know that we have skunks and we have raccoons and things like that that use these riparian zones to move around. Birds will also use them for migration. We're very familiar with the shorebirds that use the LA River, but land birds use wooded corridors for migration also. And the plants that you find in riparian zones are very often unusual. You don't find them too many other places. You're not going to find sycamores very far from the stream. You're not going to find the willows very far from the stream. So these are what we call high-quality native species that unless you have riparian zones, you'll lose them. There's a nice example existing today of riparian habitat. And through these inners, this is where you have to start seeing with the eye of faith. These pictures taken of Compton Creek a couple of years ago, driving past today, it looks quite different now. Things are possible with this. There are things we can do. Will we get it looking like it did in the days before settlement? There's no way. But can we get it looking better than it does today? Absolutely. So I would like to thank Watershed U program of UC LA and Sabrina Drill, and I would like to thank the Los Angeles and San Diego Rivers Watershed Council and Alex Kennefic and the Metropolitan Water District for putting the symposium together. I would also, my thanks always, whenever I get on my hind legs and start talking about the ecology of Southern California, I thank my friend and colleague Connie Vadheim, who is actually, she is in Colorado right now, otherwise she would have been here as well. She knows so much about this area, and she was working over there at Compton High in the Native Garden. She has done a lot of native gardens on our campus. She's done all the native gardens on our campus. We have a little bioswale at the foot of the parking lot. I encourage anybody who's interested to come by Dominguez Hills when you get a chance. And at the south end of our Lot 7, there is a bioswale. It's about 3 years old, and we're beginning to see very good bird diversity in there. We're getting some good mammal diversity in there, insects. We're seeing native species of insects that you don't see on the exotic shrubs that are more typical plantings around the campus. So a lot of things are going on at the moment, and I just see the Compton Creek restoration as being one more step in that, in making this place better than it is now. So I'd like to thank you as well for your attention.